Pax offered Lanaya the traditional azure wine with practiced ceremony, the glass catching the ballroom's swirling lights. The liquid shimmered with the deep blue of Azure Prime's oceans, presented as part of an ancient toast to health and prosperity. His movements appeared perfectly choreographed, the gesture of a corporate director honoring family tradition. The wine swirled in its crystal vessel, a beautiful poison waiting behind polite custom. Colin's combat medic instincts triggered before his conscious mind processed the threat. Something about the liquid's movement registered as wrong, too viscous with faint pulsations disturbing its smooth surface. The wine didn't flow like liquid should. It moved with a strange thickness that suggested additional compounds had been introduced. His training recognized the signs of contamination that others would miss. He caught Lanaya's wrist just as the glass touched her lips. His grip was firm but careful, stopping the motion without spilling the dangerous liquid. The interruption froze the moment, turning polite ceremony into sudden confrontation. Pax's pleasant expression tightened around the edges, his eyes flashing cold fury at the intervention. The corporate mask slipped for just one moment, revealing the calculation beneath. Colin brought the glass to his nose, the motion swift and efficient. The aromatic compounds designed to mask the poison filled his senses first, floral notes with underlying spice. Beneath that pleasant surface lurked the sharp chemical signature of neural suppressants. His military training had included identifying battlefield toxins by scent alone. This particular combination was sophisticated but recognizable to someone who'd seen similar compounds used in interrogation scenarios. Pax's voice cut through the tension. "How dare you interrupt this tradition?" The words carried the weight of offended protocol, but his eyes showed something darker. Colin ignored him, his focus entirely on the threat assessment. He activated his emergency alert, signaling Perry for immediate medical lockdown. The household security systems responded instantly, doors sealing with soft hisses around the ballroom. He administered the antidote from his emergency kit, the injector pressed against Lanaya's arm. The compounds worked quickly to neutralize the neural suppressants before they could take effect. Her vital signs stabilized on his monitor, the dangerous spike in neural activity leveling out. She looked confused but calm, unaware how close she'd come to catastrophic neurological damage. Security scans confirmed the poison's composition and intended effect. The neural suppressants would have induced a severe seizure, one that would have appeared as a spontaneous medical crisis. The resulting damage would have erased months of progress, resetting her treatment to its most dependent stage. The attack wasn't designed to kill, just to create enough damage to discredit Colin's methods and return control to the established medical team. Pax watched the security readouts with cold calculation, his anger shifting to strategic assessment. He recognized that his plan had failed but remained confident in his position. The corporate director still held power, still controlled resources, still had allies within the medical and security teams. His expression shifted back to polite concern, the mask settling into place once more. The ballroom remained locked down, the glittering event frozen in place. Guests murmured in confusion while security teams moved through the crowd. Colin kept his position between Lanaya and Pax, his body angled to block any further approach. The traditional Azuran toast had become a battlefield, the crystal glass now evidence in a corporate war fought with medical sabotage. Lanaya looked from Colin to Pax, her young mind processing the tension without understanding its full implications. She trusted the human who had helped her walk again, who had eased her pain, who now stood between her and danger she couldn't see. The neural regulator behind her ear glowed steady green, maintaining the stability that had almost been stolen. Perry slipped through the maintenance conduits beneath the Tex estate, his access codes bypassing security layers that would have stopped any official investigation. The private server room hummed with cooling systems that kept Talon Tex's research at optimal temperature. Dust motes danced in the blue light of active servers, each one holding pieces of the dead scientist's legacy. Perry's interface tendrils connected directly to the primary data vault, pulling up treatment protocols that should have remained untouched since Talon's death. The original neural regeneration formulas showed subtle but crucial alterations that changed everything. Dosage calculations had been increased by precisely 19% across key enzyme compounds. Recovery period algorithms had been shortened beyond safe parameters. The changes appeared minor in isolation, but created cascading effects throughout the entire treatment regimen. What looked like optimization actually pushed Lanaya's system past its breaking point repeatedly. Timestamp data revealed the modifications occurred after Talon's death, not during his lifetime. The changes carried digital signatures dating from 3 cycles after the funeral services. The access logs showed Pax's authorization codes used during off hours when security monitoring relaxed. The corporate director had waited until the estate was deep in mourning before beginning his systematic sabotage of the treatment protocols. Someone had deliberately modified the neural regeneration formulas to maximize side effects. The alterations ensured Lanaya would experience severe pain, cognitive disruption, and organ stress after each treatment session. The changes followed a pattern of calculated cruelty. Enough improvement to show progress on scans, but enough suffering to keep her dependent and vulnerable. The medical torture had been engineered into the science itself. Backup files from secure archives showed the true protocol Talon had designed. His original approach was gentler, more effective, and far less profitable. It used lower dosages with longer recovery periods, allowing the body to heal naturally between treatments. The method focused on sustainable progress rather than aggressive results. It valued patient comfort alongside medical advancement. The altered version required expensive countermeasures and extended treatment schedules. Each crisis created by the sabotaged protocol demanded additional medications, specialized equipment, and prolonged hospital stays. The suffering had been monetized. Every seizure, every pain spike, every organ stress event generated revenue for Tech's Interstellar's medical division. The more Lanaya suffered, the more the corporation profited. Pax hadn't just sabotaged Lanaya's health, he had built an entire revenue stream around her suffering. The treatment modifications created a cycle of crisis and response that kept funds flowing into specific divisions he controlled. Her pain became a business model, her neurological condition a profit center. The corporate director had turned a child's illness into an ongoing revenue source. Colin cross-referenced the protocol changes with Tech's Interstellar's stock fluctuations. The data revealed a disturbing pattern. Every health crisis coincided with strategic stock dips that benefited Pax's investment group. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Her seizures consistently occurred before major board meetings or financial announcements. The medical emergencies created opportunities for stock manipulation that generated massive profits for Pax's allies. The investigation uncovered a recording from Talon's private server that changed everything. The audio file contained a conversation between Talon and Dr. Krell, where Talon confronted the physician about Pax's unauthorized access to his research. Talon's voice held cold fury as he described finding security breaches in his medical files. He warned Krell that someone was tampering with his daughter's treatment for financial gain. The recording ended abruptly, leaving unanswered questions about what happened next. The evidence painted a comprehensive picture of corporate sabotage and stock manipulation. Pax had used his position to alter medical protocols, endanger a child's life, and profit from the resulting chaos. The scheme relied on the Azuran medical establishment's arrogance, their belief that their methods were beyond question, their assumption that human intervention represented the only threat to their patient. They never considered the danger might come from within their own corporate structure. Dr. Krell's medical authority provided the perfect cover for Pax's sabotage operation. As chief physician, his signature on every protocol change carried the weight of established science and professional judgment. He approved the dangerous dosage increases under claims of patient improvement, using medical terminology to disguise the harm being done. Each authorization appeared in official records with impeccable credentials backing it, making the alterations seem like thoughtful medical advancements rather than calculated endangerment. His research grants depended entirely on Pax's approval within Tech's Interstellar's corporate structure. The funding for his neurology studies, his equipment budgets, his entire career trajectory, all required the corporate director's signature. That dependence created a conflict of interest that compromised his medical ethics. He chose career security over patient safety, trading his professional integrity for continued access to resources and influence. Krell manipulated clinical trial data to support the more aggressive treatment approach. He altered outcome measurements to show better results than actually occurred. Side effect reports were minimized or removed entirely from official documentation. The data sets that should have revealed the protocol's dangers instead showed carefully crafted narratives of progress and success. He built a false scientific foundation to justify decisions that were actually motivated by corporate pressure and personal ambition. He knowingly risked Lanaya's life for career advancement and research funding. The physician understood the neurological damage the increased dosages could cause. He recognized the organ stress markers and cognitive disruption as warning signs rather than acceptable side effects. His medical training gave him the knowledge to see the danger, yet he continued down the path that put a child at risk for his own professional benefit. Colin found the original clinical notes buried in auxiliary storage, hidden behind layers of security clearances. Talon's handwritten observations detailed the safe dosage parameters and recovery timelines. The notes showed careful, gradual approaches that prioritized patient comfort alongside medical progress. They revealed a treatment philosophy completely opposite to the aggressive protocol being implemented. Krell's early warnings about overdose risks had been systematically deleted from official records. His initial concerns about the increased dosages, his memos about potential neurological damage, his recommendations for more conservative approaches, all vanished from the main servers. Only fragments remained in backup systems, showing a physician who initially recognized the danger before choosing to become part of it. The physician who swore to heal became the instrument of harm. His medical expertise, which should have protected Lanaya, was weaponized against her. His knowledge of Azuran physiology and treatment protocols enabled the very sabotage that endangered her life. The healer became the poison in the system, using his position to facilitate corporate greed rather than patient care. His betrayal cut deeper than Pax's because it violated the core oath of his profession. The corporate director operated from greed and ambition, but the physician betrayed the fundamental trust between healer and patient. He abandoned the principle that should have guided every decision: first, do no harm. That violation resonated through the medical community, shaking the foundation of what it meant to be a healer. The medical staff's prejudice against humans made them blind to their own colleagues' crimes. Their focus on the human outsider prevented them from seeing the corruption within their ranks. They questioned Colin's methods while accepting Krell's approvals without scrutiny. Their bias created the perfect environment for the physician's betrayal to go unnoticed, allowing the danger to continue right under their noses. The investigation revealed audio recordings where Krell confronted Talon about security breaches in the medical files. The physician's voice showed concern initially, then shifted to compliance as corporate pressure increased. The recordings traced his moral descent from concerned healer to willing participant in the sabotage scheme. They showed the exact moment when career preservation overcame medical ethics. Elisa called the emergency board meeting with security teams positioned at every entrance. The conference room's polished table reflected the tense faces of the directors as they took their seats. Colin stood at the head of the table, his posture straight and voice steady as he laid out the evidence with military precision. He presented the altered treatment protocols, the timestamp data, the audio recordings, each piece fitting together to form an undeniable picture of corporate sabotage. His words carried the weight of fact, delivered without emotion or accusation, just cold, hard truth. Pax tried to dismiss the evidence as human fabrication. He leaned back in his chair, a condescending smile playing on his lips as he suggested Colin had tampered with the files. But the digital timestamps didn't lie. They showed his authorization codes accessing the servers during off hours, making changes that compromised Lanaya's treatment. The board members watched, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern as the evidence mounted against their director. Dr. Krell broke under the pressure of direct questioning. His professional composure cracked, revealing the fear beneath. He confessed to altering the protocols, his voice trembling as he admitted his role in the sabotage. The physician revealed that Pax had promised him control of the entire research division in exchange for his cooperation. The admission hung in the air, a stark betrayal of medical ethics for corporate power. Board members watched in horror as their director's ambition unraveled before them. The carefully constructed image of corporate leadership dissolved into something darker and more dangerous. They saw the manipulation of medical science for profit, the endangerment of a child's life, the systematic betrayal of trust that extended through their organization. The room filled with whispered reactions as directors processed the scale of the deception. Pax made his move when he saw the evidence turning against him. His hand dipped into his datapad, activating a hidden neural disruptor. The device glowed with dangerous energy as he aimed it at Lanaya. He knew her altered nervous system couldn't survive the shock. It would cause permanent cognitive damage while making her collapse appear to be a medical emergency. His expression showed cold calculation even in that final, desperate act. Colin tackled him before the charge could fire. Their bodies crashed across the polished table, sending datapads and documents scattering. The neural disruptor skittered across the floor, its energy discharge harmlessly striking the ceiling. Security teams moved instantly, their training overriding the shock of seeing their director attempt murder in front of the entire board. Restraints snapped closed on both Pax and Krell. The security teams worked with efficient precision, neutralizing the threats without further violence. The board watched in stunned silence as the two men were secured, their positions of authority meaning nothing against the evidence of their crimes. The directors voted unanimously to remove Pax from his position. The decision came quickly without debate or hesitation. They had seen the proof with their own eyes, the altered files, the timestamps, the attempted use of a weapon against a child. Corporate loyalty meant nothing compared to the blatant criminality displayed in their boardroom. Elisa took control of the meeting, her voice steady despite the tension. She outlined the immediate steps needed to secure the company and ensure Lanaya's safety. The directors listened with renewed attention, recognizing the need for strong leadership in the wake of such betrayal. The emergency meeting had revealed the corruption at their highest levels, but it had also shown the strength of their response. The security teams escorted Pax and Krell from the room. Their departure left a heavy silence in their wake. The board members looked at each other, then at Elisa and Colin. The confrontation had changed everything about how they viewed their company, their leadership, and the human who had exposed the truth. The polished table bore the scars of the struggle, scratches from the struggle, scattered documents, the lingering energy smell from the disruptor. The Corporate Judiciary Council filed multiple charges against Director Pax that spanned interplanetary legal jurisdictions. Attempted murder, corporate sabotage, and stock manipulation headed the list, each charge carrying severe penalties under Confederation law. His arrest sent shockwaves through the corporate world, revealing how deeply corruption had infiltrated one of Azure Prime's most prestigious companies. The case became a benchmark for corporate accountability, with every development covered by galactic media outlets. Dr. Krell's medical license revocation echoed across all Confederation worlds in an unprecedented disciplinary action. The decision came from the Unified Medical Ethics Board after reviewing the evidence of his deliberate protocol alterations. His name vanished from medical registries, research databases, and professional networks simultaneously. The physician who had betrayed his oath would never practice medicine again in any system that valued ethical standards. The board appointed Elisa Tex as interim CEO with full executive powers, a move that stabilized the company during the crisis. Her first actions focused on transparency and accountability, opening internal investigations into all departments. She restructured corporate governance to prevent future abuses of power, installing new oversight committees with independent authority. The changes reassured investors and employees that Tex Interstellar would operate with integrity moving forward. She immediately placed Colin in charge of Lanaya's medical team, bypassing traditional credential requirements. His combat medic experience and proven success with her treatment outweighed conventional qualifications. The medical staff who had initially resisted his methods now followed his guidance without question. They had seen the results of both approaches. Their aggressive protocols had caused suffering, while his compassionate methods produced genuine healing. The new treatment protocol became standard for neurogenic atrophy cases across the Confederation. Medical facilities adopted the Earth-based principles of gradual progress and patient comfort. The approach reduced side effects while maintaining effective neural regeneration, offering better quality of life during treatment. Other families dealing with the rare condition now had hope where previously only aggressive and painful options existed. Earth Alliance medics received consulting roles at Tex Interstellar, creating the first formal exchange program between human and Azuran medical practices. They brought perspectives on patient care that valued individual comfort alongside technical treatment. The collaboration produced innovative approaches that combined advanced technology with human compassion, improving outcomes across multiple treatment areas. Lanaya's recovery accelerated dramatically, without the sabotage treatments affecting her progress. Her neural scans showed steady improvement without the dangerous spikes and crashes that had previously marked her treatment. The constant pain that had shadowed her days diminished to manageable levels, allowing her to focus on rehabilitation rather than endurance. Her cognitive functions stabilized, no longer fluctuating between clarity and confusion after each session. She took her first unaided steps across the estate's gardens. The biosupport systems disconnected for the first time since her illness began. The morning sun caught her smile as she moved between flowering alien plants, her steps slow but steady. The achievement represented more than physical progress. It symbolized her reclaiming independence from the condition that had confined her. The garden staff paused their work to watch, their tools still in hand as they witnessed the moment. The household staff who had once scorned Colin now sought his advice on human medical techniques. They asked about pain management methods, patient communication strategies, and emergency response procedures from Earth medicine. Their questions showed genuine interest in learning rather than suspicion or dismissal. The prejudice that had initially marked their interactions faded into professional respect and curiosity. Colin became the most trusted voice in the household, his opinion valued on matters beyond medical care. Staff consulted him on security improvements, environmental adjustments for Lanaya's comfort, and even menu planning to support her nutritional needs. His transition from overlooked janitor to essential advisor demonstrated how quickly true competence can overcome initial prejudice when given the opportunity to prove itself. The observation dome offered a panoramic view of Azure Prime's twin moons rising over the capital city. Holographic stars swirled around Elisa and Colin as they reviewed the company's new strategic direction. Data streams flowed between them, showing the restructured medical division and its revised priorities. The corporation that once valued profit above all now placed patient outcomes at the center of every decision. Elisa offered him the permanent position with straightforward clarity. Head of Patient Advocacy, she said, the title carrying weight in the quiet space between them. The role would give him authority over all treatment protocols and patient care standards across Tex Interstellar's medical divisions. It represented a fundamental shift in how the company viewed healthcare, from profit center to human right. Their professional relationship shifted during that conversation under the artificial stars. The formal boundaries between employer and employee dissolved into something more personal. They spoke less about corporate strategy and more about their hopes for Lanaya's future. The datapad between them showed not just business plans but shared dreams for what medical care could become. He kissed her as the twin moons reached their zenith above the dome. The gesture felt natural, inevitable after everything they'd survived together. Human and Azuran found common ground in that moment, their differences mattering less than what they'd built between them. The holographic constellations continued their slow dance around them, witnesses to the beginning of something new. The galaxy watched through media feeds and corporate reports as Tex Interstellar announced its partnership with Earth medical institutions. The agreement brought human doctors and nurses to Azuran facilities, creating the first formal exchange of medical knowledge between their species. The collaboration focused on combining advanced technology with compassionate care, blending the best of both approaches. Colin's compassion became the model for cross-species care protocols throughout the Confederation. His methods, once dismissed as primitive human sentimentality, now formed the foundation of new treatment standards. Medical teams studied his approach to patient communication, pain management, and gradual progress. The janitor who cleaned floors became the teacher who trained physicians. Lanaya painted their portrait during her art therapy sessions. The holographic image showed human, Azuran, and child united against a backdrop of stars. Her brushstrokes captured the essence of their unusual family, the strength in their connection, the hope in their eyes, the peace they'd found together. The painting hung in the main hallway of the estate, a daily reminder of what they'd overcome. The household that once held hostility toward humans now welcomed them regularly. Earth medical staff moved through the corridors with confidence, their presence accepted rather than questioned. The kitchen staff learned to prepare human dishes alongside Azuran cuisine. The security teams developed protocols that protected rather than restricted human visitors. Prejudice gave way to practical cooperation. Colin's janitor uniform hung in a place of honor in his quarters, positioned beside his marine medals. The two uniforms told the complete story of the man, the soldier who fought for others and the janitor who healed them. Both roles required courage, just different kinds. The cleaning cart that once symbolized his low status now represented his commitment to seeing value where others saw none. The man everyone overlooked had remade an interstellar corporation through empathy alone. He hadn't used weapons or corporate strategy or political influence. He'd simply cared for a child when others saw only a medical case. That basic human compassion had unraveled corruption, changed medical standards, and brought two species closer together. Sometimes the most powerful force in the galaxy wasn't technology or wealth. It was the willingness to kneel when someone needed help. Tex Interstellar's new protocols changed Azuran medicine from the inside out. The focus shifted from aggressive intervention to patient-centered care, prioritizing comfort and gradual progress over rapid results. Hospitals across the Confederation adopted the revised treatment models, integrating human principles of empathy and individualized support. Medical teams now considered quality of life as important as biological outcomes, a fundamental rethinking of healthcare priorities. Patient-centered care became the standard across all Confederation worlds. Medical facilities implemented mandatory training in communication and compassion, teaching staff to see beyond diagnostic readouts. The changes reduced treatment complications and improved recovery rates system-wide. Patients reported higher satisfaction and better adherence to treatment plans when their comfort and understanding were prioritized alongside medical science. Human medical personnel received unprecedented access to advanced alien technology through formal exchange programs. Earth doctors and nurses trained in Azuran facilities, learning to operate regeneration chambers and neural mapping systems. The knowledge transfer worked both ways, with human approaches to pain management and patient communication enriching Azuran practices. This cross-species collaboration produced innovative treatment models that combined the best of both medical traditions. The Earth Alliance upgraded Colin's discharge to honorable status after reviewing his contributions to interstellar relations. The official notice cited his role in advancing medical cooperation and protecting vulnerable individuals across species lines. His military record now reflected the truth of his service, a medic who always put patients first, regardless of orders or boundaries. The correction came with a formal apology for the original dishonorable designation. Celestial Academy instituted mandatory empathy training for all medical students. The curriculum included human communication techniques, pain management principles, and ethical decision-making frameworks. Students learned to recognize patient distress beyond physical symptoms, developing skills in emotional support and compassionate care. The training emphasized that healing required technical skill and human connection in equal measure. Colin returned to the academy not as a janitor, but as a visiting lecturer. He stood in the same corridors where he once cleaned floors, now teaching Azuran medical students about Earth approaches to patient care. His classes focused on practical compassion, how to listen, when to touch, why comfort matters as much as technology. Students who once walked past him now took notes on his every word. Lanaya became the first neurogenic atrophy survivor to attend school normally. Her neural regulator remained discreetly behind her ear, but she participated in classes without special accommodations. She joined other children in physical activities, her movements gradually strengthening with each passing day. Her presence in regular classrooms demonstrated what became possible when treatment focused on ability rather than limitation. Her story inspired comprehensive legislation protecting disabled beings across all Confederation systems. The new laws guaranteed access to education, medical care, and public spaces regardless of physical or neurological differences. The legislation mandated reasonable accommodations and prohibited discrimination based on health status. Lanaya's face became synonymous with the movement for equal rights and opportunities. The janitor who wiped enzyme paste from a child's cheek became a symbol of interstellar hope. His image appeared in medical journals and social advocacy campaigns, representing the power of individual compassion to change systems. People across species recognized that sometimes the most important solutions came from unexpected places and humble actions. His story proved that status and credentials mattered less than character and commitment. Humanity's greatest export to the galaxy wasn't technology or weapons or economic systems. It was the simple, powerful force of compassion. This understanding reshaped interstellar relations, creating new models of cooperation based on mutual care rather than competition. The universe learned that the most advanced civilization wasn't the one with the best technology, but the one that best cared for its most vulnerable members. This realization began with one man helping one child and spread across stars. Colin found quiet peace in the Tex family gardens, the scent of alien blossoms mixing with earth roses he'd planted himself. The combat dreams that once haunted his sleep had finally gone still. The memories of battlefield triage and lost comrades faded into something manageable, something distant. His hands, once trained for weapons and wound packing, now tended to flowers that knew nothing of war. Elisa joined him on the stone bench, her azuran skin glowing in the twin moonlight. Her hand found his without hesitation, their fingers interlacing across species lines. The difference in their skin tones, her golden hue against his earth-tanned complexion, spoke of bridges built where none existed before. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their shared world turning peacefully around them. They watched Lanaya running with other children through the garden paths. Her laughter carried on the evening air, bright and unburdened. The neural regulator behind her ear caught the moonlight briefly, its presence barely noticeable against her joy. She moved with a grace that once seemed impossible, her legs strong and sure beneath her. The other children kept pace with her, their games including her naturally now. Staff members passed along the garden paths, their attitudes transformed. Where once they had sneered or looked away, now they nodded respect as Colin passed. Their eyes held genuine acknowledgement of the man who had saved their young mistress. The silver-uniformed attendants who once enforced segregation now maintained a respectful distance that spoke of earned regard rather than prejudice. Nex approached with his evening security report, his posture different than before. The cold efficiency remained, but beneath it lay genuine deference to Colin's medical authority. He presented the data on household safety with a slight bow of his head, his eyes meeting Colin's directly. The change wasn't dramatic, but it was real. The head of household acknowledging the head of patient care as an equal. From the open kitchen windows came Amperi's happy whirring as she baked. The scent of human chocolate chip cookies mixed with the aroma of traditional Azuran spice cakes. Her optical sensors glowed with contentment as she moved between mixing bowls, creating treats that represented their blended household. The kitchen that once produced only alien delicacies now embraced Earth recipes with enthusiasm. The Marine who had lost everything in a dishonorable discharge found everything he never knew he wanted. The quiet peace of family life replaced the adrenaline of combat. The satisfaction of healing surpassed the rush of battle. The love of this unusual family filled spaces he hadn't known were empty inside him. The lost soldier became a found caretaker. His earth toughness combined with Azuran precision created something entirely new in their household. The military discipline he brought to Lanaya's care provided structure without rigidity. The compassion he mixed with advanced technology produced healing without suffering. The blend of human warmth and alien efficiency became their signature approach, method that valued both progress and peace. The man who was nobody in the eyes of Azure Primes, Elite became somebody through simple acts of care. The galaxy that judged too quickly finally saw the value it had overlooked. His lack of credentials mattered less than his proven results. His species became irrelevant beside his actions. The janitor became the expert through demonstration, not declaration. His greatest victory wasn't on any battlefield with medals and commendations. It came at a child's bedside during quiet night vigils. It showed in every step Lanaya took without her wheelchair. It lived in the peace that replaced her pain. The combat medic turned caretaker had won a war against suffering, and the prize was this garden, this family, this peace. The story ends where it began, in the gleaming corridors of Celestial Academy, with a simple act of kindness. A damp cloth wiping enzyme paste from a child's cheek, a quiet word when others looked away. That small moment rippled across stars, reshaping civilizations. Protocols changed, prejudices fell, and two species found common ground in compassion. The uniform didn't matter, not the janitors, not the Marines. True heroism wears no badge except empathy. In a universe of advanced technology and ancient biases, sometimes the most powerful force is a hand offered without hesitation. The Ravager's bioluminescent eyes glowed in the darkness as it stalked the child. But when a pug's collar pulsed blue and drove the monsters back, everything changed. This is the story of how one soldier's isolation shattered when he saved an alien girl and discovered a conspiracy that could destroy two civilizations. The metal box sat precisely on the survey line that divided two civilizations, a deliberate choice by a man who'd had enough of divisions. Ricky Pierce's camper wasn't much to look at, just a dented rectangular habitation module on 6 worn tires, parked exactly where the Vexari expansion accord ended and Terrell's protected lands began. He'd positioned it himself after mustering out of the Earth Defense Force, using his old survey equipment to get the coordinates perfect. This wasn't retirement. This was self-imposed exile. To the east, the Vexari metropolis glittered with chrome spires that pierced the violet twilight, their sharp angles reflecting the system's twin suns. Their cities pulsed with ambition, with progress that moved at the speed of corporate greed. Ricky could hear the faint hum of their energy grids even from here, a constant reminder of the civilization that saw humans as useful tools at best, competitors at worst. To the west, Terrell's settlement spread across the rolling hills like a living thing, its structures grown rather than built. The Alaran people moved through their fields with deliberate grace, their traditional ways whispering of older knowledge nearly lost to time. They viewed humans with deep suspicion, remembering other colonies that had brought nothing but disruption to their carefully balanced world. Ricky maintained his isolation like a shield against both sides. His EDF training kept him alive here. The constant scans for movement, the strategic placement of sensors, the way he never sat with his back to a window. The nightmares still came most nights, flashes of missions gone wrong where his orders left scorched earth and civilian casualties. This borderland was his punishment and his protection, a prison of his own making where he could at least control the damage. His only company was Brutus, a pug whose breathing sounded like a faulty air recycler. The dog's blue-lit collar was Ricky's one concession to advanced technology, a defensive field generator disguised as pet gear. He'd configured it himself during those long nights when the memories got too loud. The collar could create a temporary energy barrier strong enough to stop small arms fire, a paradox of protective technology in a man who refused to carry weapons anymore. The border peace was fragile, maintained through mutual distrust and the ever-present threat of nocturnal ravagers that hunted in the grasslands between territories. Ricky watched both settlements through his scopes, noting the patrol patterns, the trade routes, the subtle movements that hinted at tensions brewing beneath the surface. Every sunrise brought the same tension, two alien cultures eyeing each other across the neutral zone, both viewing the lone human with equal suspicion. He kept his head down, his interactions limited to necessary supply runs and maintenance checks. The camper's systems were basic but reliable, its metal walls holding in the smells of recycled air and instant coffee. Brutus would curl against his leg at night, a warm weight that grounded him when the memories threatened to pull him under. This was the life he'd chosen. Minimal contact, maximum distance from anything resembling responsibility or connection. The stage was set for everything to change, though Ricky didn't know it yet. A decorated soldier turned hermit, a pug with military-grade protection tech and two civilizations balanced on the edge of conflict. All it would take was one crack in his carefully constructed isolation to make him the unlikely fulcrum between worlds. Lyran slipped through the energy barrier that protected Teriel's southern settlement, her small form barely disturbing the shimmering curtain. The elders had forbidden night excursions beyond the perimeter, but the celestial patterns called to her in ways she couldn't explain. On her homeworld, thick atmospheric layers hid the stars from view. But here on New Proxima, the night sky unveiled constellations unknown to Elleran tradition. She carried a hand-drawn star chart, her fingers tracing patterns her people had never documented. The plains stretched before her, silver grass swaying in the night breeze. She found a small clearing and lay back, her emerald eyes fixed on the swirling galaxies above. For a moment, There was only the rustle of grass and the wonder of countless suns burning in the emptiness. Then the first glow appeared at the edge of her vision, a pulsing blue light moving through the tall grass. More lights joined the first, emerging from the darkness like malevolent fireflies. The Ravagers moved with coordinated purpose, their hyena-like forms silhouetted against the starlight. Lyran scrambled to her feet, her star chart forgotten in the grass. The Predators formed a loose circle around her, their bioluminescent patches flickering in eerie synchrony. She'd heard stories about these creatures, but the elders said they rarely approached the settlement barriers. Their eyes glowed with the same blue light that marked their hides, intelligent and focused. They didn't rush her immediately, but maintained their positions, closing the circle slowly and methodically. Lyran's breath caught in her throat as she realized they were hurting her, cutting off escape routes with tactical precision that felt unnatural for wild animals. She broke into a run, heading back toward the barrier she'd crossed. The Ravagers matched her movement, their coordination unsettling. One darted forward, its claws catching her arm with surprising force. The pain was sharp and immediate, deeper than any scratch from natural claws should have been. Blood welled from the wound, dark against her green-tinged skin. The creatures didn't press their advantage immediately. They maintained formation, driving her away from the settlement and toward the open plains. Lyran understood with chilling clarity that this wasn't random hunting behavior. They were guiding her somewhere specific, using calculated strikes to keep her moving in their desired direction. Through the pain and fear, she spotted a single point of light in the distance, a steady yellow glow unlike the pulsating blue of the Ravagers. Ricky's camper stood like a beacon in the darkness, its windows casting rectangles of light across the grass. She changed direction, pushing through the pain in her arm, her small legs pumping as she ran toward the only shelter in sight. The Ravagers adjusted their pursuit instantly, their formation tightening as they recognized her new course. Their coordination felt wrong, their movements too calculated for ordinary predators. They moved like soldiers executing a plan, not animals following instinct. Lyran's desperate flight carried her across the neutral zone, her bare feet tearing on the rough terrain. The camper's light grew larger, its shape becoming distinct against the star-filled sky. She could hear the Ravagers closing behind her, their panting breaths and the rustle of grass marking their progress. She reached the camper's metal steps just as the lead Ravager lunged. Its teeth snapped inches from her leg as she scrambled up onto the platform. The creature's eyes glowed with frustrated intelligence as it backed away, joining the circle of predators that now surrounded the small habitation module. Lyran pressed herself against the cold metal door, her wounded arm throbbing in time with her racing heart. The camper door hissed open and Brutus trotted down the metal steps, his stubby legs moving with purpose. The pug's breathing sounded louder than usual in the tense silence, his wrinkled face scanning the circle of glowing predators. He positioned himself between Lyran and the nearest Ravager, his body blocking the child from view. Brutus's collar began to pulse with a soft blue light that intensified with each beat. The device wasn't decorative. Ricky had modified standard EDF personal protection technology into something that could shield them both. The energy field extended outward in a visible wave, creating a hemisphere of shimmering blue that made the air hum. The Ravagers recoiled as the field reached them, their coordinated advance breaking into confused retreat. The pug didn't bark or lunge forward. He stood his ground, a low growl rumbling in his chest that carried more authority than his 20-pound frame should have possessed. His normally comical face looked deadly serious, the loose skin around his eyes pulled tight as he maintained the energy barrier. The technology was designed to stop projectiles and energy weapons, not manage interspecies confrontations. Ricky had built it for personal defense during supply runs, never imagining it would be used against alien predators. The Ravagers seemed disoriented by the blue energy. Their bioluminescent patches flickered erratically, the synchronized patterns breaking into chaotic flashes. They paced at the edge of the energy field, testing its boundaries with cautious approaches before pulling back. Their movements lost the military precision they'd shown during the hunt, becoming more like confused animals than coordinated hunters. Lyran pressed herself against the camper's door, her wounded arm throbbing. She watched the small earth creature stand between her and certain death. The pug's warmth reached her even through the energy field, a solid presence in the terrifying darkness. She slowly reached out and touched his back, feeling the vibration of his growl through her fingertips. The contact seemed to steady them both. Brutus maintained the barrier without faltering, his breathing evening out as he focused on the task. The blue light from his collar cast strange shadows across the grassland, making the Ravagers look like flickering ghosts at the edge of perception. They continued their hesitant circling, but the coordinated hunting behavior had broken. Some scratched at the ground in frustration while others simply watched, their glowing eyes fixed on the energy field. The pug shifted position slightly, keeping himself between Lyran and the most aggressive-looking Ravager. His stubby tail stood straight out, a sign of concentration rather than fear. The energy field pulsed in rhythm with his breathing now, as if the technology had synced with its wearer's biological rhythms. The Ravagers' confusion deepened, their pack coordination completely shattered by the unfamiliar defense mechanism. Lyran curled her uninjured arm around Brutus's middle, drawing comfort from his solid warmth. The pug leaned into her touch without breaking his focus on the predators. In that moment, species and origin meant nothing, only the simple reality of one living creature protecting another. The alien child and the Earth animal formed a bond that transcended language or culture, built on the immediate understanding of shared danger. Brutus's defensive posture never wavered as the night wore on. The Ravagers eventually began to lose interest, their glowing forms retreating into the tall grass one by one. The energy field continued to pulse, a steady blue heartbeat in the darkness that promised safety. The pug remained alert long after the last predator had vanished, his ears twitching at every night sound. When the final Ravager disappeared from view, Brutus finally relaxed his stance. The energy field dissipated slowly, the blue light fading back into his collar. He turned and nudged Lyran's hand with his wet nose, his breathing returning to its normal wheezing rhythm. The immediate danger had passed, but the pug stayed close to the child, his body still positioned between her and the darkness beyond. The motion sensor alarm pulled Ricky from a dream of burning cities. He moved before his eyes fully opened, his body remembering combat protocols his mind tried to forget. The rifle came from its wall mount smoothly, his hands checking the charge level by touch alone. Night vision activated with a soft click, painting the world in shades of green. Through the camper's reinforced window, he saw the circle of Ravagers and the small figure huddled against his door. Brutus's collar pulsed blue in the darkness, holding the predators at bay. Ricky's training assessed the situation in seconds. 8 hostiles, 1 civilian, defensive tech active. His fingers tightened on the rifle stock. This was the moment he'd prepared for and dreaded. Maintain neutrality or intervene. Let borderland politics play out or become part of the equation. The child's green-tinged skin marked her as Alaran, from the settlement that wanted nothing to do with humans. He pushed the door open, the rifle coming up to his shoulder. The Ravagers turned their glowing eyes toward him, their coordination returning as they identified a new threat. Ricky fired 3 shots into the ground near the lead predator's feet. Dirt and grass sprayed upward, the energy rounds leaving small craters that steamed in the cool air. The creatures recoiled but didn't scatter like normal animals would. They retreated with tactical spacing, maintaining formation as they moved back. Their behavior felt wrong. Wild predators should have broken and run from the gunfire. These moved like units following orders, their retreat too organized, their glowing eyes tracking him with calculating intelligence. Ricky kept the rifle ready as he approached the child. His eyes cataloged details, the bleeding arm wound, the unnatural depth of the claw marks. Brutus's collar still pulsing with defensive energy. The pug watched him approach but didn't break his protective stance. Ricky lowered the rifle, slinging it across his back. He knelt beside the child, his movements economical and precise. The girl flinched away initially, her emerald eyes wide with fear and pain. Ricky kept his hands visible, his posture non-threatening. He'd done civilian extraction before, back when he wore an EDF uniform. The muscle memory returned despite his attempts to bury it. He reached for her slowly, his soldier's hands surprisingly gentle as he checked the wound. The claw marks went deeper than Ravager attacks usually did, with bruising that suggested something more than natural weapons. The child trembled but didn't pull away this time. Ricky lifted her carefully, one arm supporting her back, the other under her knees. She weighed less than his rifle and gear combined. Brutus fell into step beside them as Ricky carried the girl toward the camper, The pug kept looking back at the retreating ravagers, his low growl a constant warning. Ricky's boots clicked on the metal steps as he carried the child inside. The camper's interior lights revealed the extent of her injuries, the ragged tear in her simple tunic, the way her breathing hitched with pain. He laid her on his bunk, the same cot where he'd wrestled with nightmares of failed missions. This felt different from those operations. No command structure, no extraction team, no political objectives. Just one injured child and a man who'd promised himself he wouldn't get involved anymore. His hands moved automatically, retrieving the medkit from its wall mount. The professional detachment he'd maintained for years began to crack as he cleaned the wound. This wasn't about orders or strategy. This was about a child bleeding on his bunk, while her people slept unaware behind their energy barriers. Ricky's thumb brushed against her shoulder as he applied antiseptic, feeling the slight tremor that ran through her small frame. Brutus jumped up on the bunk and settled next to the girl, his warm body pressed against her side. The pug's presence seemed to calm her, her breathing easing slightly. Ricky finished bandaging the wound, his movements precise but now infused with something he hadn't felt in years. Simple human concern for another living being. The camper's door sealed behind them, locking out the night and the watching predators. Ricky remained standing by the bunk, watching the child and the dog curled together. His isolation had been breached, his careful neutrality compromised. The first crack in his armored existence had appeared, and through it poured a responsibility he'd thought he'd left behind on some distant battlefield. The camper's interior smelled of antiseptic and recycled air, a scent Ricky knew too well from field hospitals. He cleaned Lyron's wound with methodical precision, his fingers moving with practiced efficiency. The gash ran deeper than any Ravager claw mark he'd seen before. The edges showed strange bruising that spread out in spiderweb patterns under her green-tinged skin. The discoloration didn't match typical tissue damage from animal attacks. His medical training took over, hands working automatically while his mind cataloged the anomalies. The antiseptic solution foamed slightly as he cleaned, revealing more of the wound's unnatural characteristics. The claw marks seemed to have microscopic barbs that caused deeper tearing than standard Ravager anatomy should allow. Ricky's concern grew as he noticed the way the surrounding tissue pulsed with faint bioluminescence, similar to the predator's markings. Lyron watched him with large emerald eyes that missed nothing. She studied the human's face, the careful way his hands moved, the tools he selected from the medkit. Her silence felt observational rather than fearful, as if she were cataloging this strange experience for later analysis. She noted the scars on his arms, the military tattoos that peeked from under his sleeves, the way his eyes flicked to the windows periodically while maintaining focus on her injury. Brutus leaned against her uninjured side, his warm weight a comfort in the sterile environment. The pug's breathing provided a steady rhythm that helped calm the child's racing heart. His presence created a bridge between the alien and the human, a point of connection in the tense atmosphere. Lyron's free hand found its way to the dog's back, her fingers tracing the wrinkles of his skin. Ricky spoke softly as he applied the healing gel. "It's okay. I've got you." The words felt unfamiliar in his mouth, phrases he hadn't used since extracting civilians from war zones. The reassurance sounded rough, unused, but carried genuine intent. He smoothed the bandage over the wound, his touch surprisingly gentle for hands that had known only weapons and machinery for years. The camper's lights hummed overhead, casting sharp shadows across the small space. This metal box that had been Ricky's self-imposed prison now served as an unlikely sanctuary. The weapons mounted on walls, the tactical displays, the survival gear, all of it faded into background against the simple act of treating a child's injury. The environment designed for isolation became a place of connection through necessity. Lyron's observant eyes took in the human's living space. She saw the minimal comforts, the lack of personal items, the way everything served practical purposes. Her people lived surrounded by grown structures and natural materials, but this human chose metal and technology. Yet his hands showed care rather than cruelty, his actions protection rather than threat. Ricky finished securing the bandage, his fingers lingering for a moment to ensure the seal was proper. The professional detachment he'd maintained began to fray at the edges. This wasn't a mission objective or a tactical situation. This was one being helping another, stripped of species or faction loyalties. The intimacy of the medical care created a bridge that diplomacy had failed to build. In that cramped space, two solitary beings found unexpected common ground. The soldier who had rejected connection and the child who had ventured beyond safety both found themselves in a moment of shared vulnerability. The campers' systems continued their background hum, but the space between them filled with something new, tentative trust being forged through simple human decency. Brutus shifted position, pressing closer to Lyran as Ricky put away the medkit. The pug's presence provided a neutral ground, a living reminder that compassion transcended species boundaries. The bandage on Lyran's arm stood out white against her green skin, a marker of the first genuine interaction between human and Ellerin that didn't involve suspicion or conflict. The first rays of dawn painted the neutral zone in gold and violet, catching the morning mist that rose from the grasslands. Ricky stood by his camper door, watching Lyran trace patterns in the condensation on the window. The relative peace shattered when Elder Thorin crested the hill with 20 Alleran villagers behind him. Their traditional woven garments flowed around them like extensions of the landscape itself, but their expressions held nothing of nature's tranquility. Thorin's staff struck the ground with finality, the sound carrying across the morning quiet. "Human, you have taken one of our children." The accusation hung between them, weighted with generations of suspicion. His eyes scanned Ricky's camper as if it were a cage rather than a shelter. The villagers behind him tightened their grip on farming tools that could easily become weapons, their mistrust a palpable force in the morning air. Lyran pushed the camper door open, her bandaged arm held carefully. "He saved me, Elder. The Ravagers." Her testimony faded against the weight of cultural memory. The villagers' eyes remained fixed on Ricky, their postures tense. They saw only a human standing too close to one of their children, his military bearing and technology marking him as everything their traditions warned against. Generations of human expansion and corporate exploitation had trained them to see abduction where rescue might exist. Ricky kept his hands visible, his voice level. "I was bringing her back at first light." The simplicity of his intention crashed against the complexity of interspecies relations. He gestured toward Lyran. "She's injured but safe." The cultural divide turned basic facts into complicated negotiations. Where Ricky saw a medical emergency handled, the Allerans saw unauthorized contact with their young. Where he saw a safe return, they saw a potential bargaining chip. Thorin's eyes narrowed, studying the bandage on Lyran's arm as if it might be part of some human deception. Brutus positioned himself between Ricky and the villagers, his collar emitting a faint blue glow that pulsed in rhythm with his breathing. The pug's protective stance added another layer of tension, an earth animal defending a human against aliens who revered natural harmony. The technology in Brutus's collar represented everything the Allerans distrusted about human innovation. The confrontation escalated when a Vixari surveillance craft descended without warning, its engine silent but its presence overwhelming. The sleek vehicle hovered above them, its chrome surface reflecting the rising sun. A scanning beam swept across the gathering, recording everything: the armed villagers, the human with the child, the tense standoff. What had been a local incident suddenly had corporate witnesses. Ricky understood immediately how this would be interpreted. The Vixari would see provocation, the Allerans would see collaboration, and his neutral position evaporated like the morning mist. His rescue had become a political incident, documented by the very corporation that coveted Terrale's lands. The surveillance craft's cameras captured every detail, ensuring this moment would be analyzed in corporate boardrooms and diplomatic meetings. Thorin's expression darkened as he looked from the Vixari craft back to Ricky. The Elder saw, not a rescuer but a human who had brought corporate attention to their doorstep. The villagers closed ranks, their farming tools now clearly held as defensive weapons. Ricky's good intentions meant nothing against centuries of cultural baggage and corporate interference. The soldier who had chosen isolation now stood at the center of a three-way standoff. His camper, once a symbol of withdrawal, had become ground zero for interspecies conflict. The morning air, once filled with birdsong, now hummed with tension and the quiet whir of surveillance technology. Ricky's hands remained at his sides, but his mind began calculating angles of approach, defensive positions, extraction routes, old habits resurfacing despite his best efforts to bury them. A sleek Vexari hover vehicle descended without warning, its polished chrome surface reflecting the morning sun like a silver weapon. The craft settled onto the grass with a whisper of energy, its door sliding open to reveal Administrator Terran. His smile looked manufactured, a corporate product designed to put people at ease while his eyes calculated profit margins. He stepped forward with measured confidence, his tailored suit stark against the natural landscape. Terran's voice carried the smooth cadence of boardroom negotiations. He spoke of mutual benefit and shared prosperity, his words carefully chosen to sound reasonable. His proposition seemed simple: Vexari protection in exchange for a portion of Terrale's agricultural output. He emphasized the rarity of the region's fertile soil, the value of what the Alarans cultivated through their traditional methods. The offer wrapped exploitation in the language of partnership. Ricky's skepticism came instantly, honed by years of watching corporations operate in border regions. He recognized the pattern: offer protection that creates dependency, then control the resources completely. His eyes tracked Terran's subtle movements, the way the Administrator's gaze kept returning to the fertile fields beyond the village. This wasn't about mutual benefit. This was about colonization disguised as cooperation. Brutus's collar began pulsing with a soft blue light, the defensive technology sensing threat where words sounded friendly. The pug positioned himself slightly in front of Lyran, his normally relaxed body tense with awareness. The animal's instinctual response confirmed what Ricky already felt. Beneath the polished language lay predatory intentions. Nar arrived silently, her healer's eyes missing nothing. She watched Terran with pragmatic wariness, her hands resting at her sides in a gesture that looked relaxed but ready. As Lyran's mother, she understood the immediate danger to her child. As a community elder, she recognized the broader threat to her people's way of life. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes cataloged every detail of the corporate representative's presentation. Terran continued speaking, his hands moving in gestures that seemed rehearsed. He mentioned infrastructure development, security enhancements, technological sharing, all the buzzwords that sounded like progress but meant control. His eyes flickered toward the villagers, assessing their reactions, calculating how much resistance they might offer. The Vexari expansion initiative suddenly revealed its true nature beneath the veneer of corporate generosity. Ricky watched the Administrator's performance with growing understanding. This wasn't just about land or resources anymore. The protection offer was the opening move in a larger game of domination. The Vexari wanted to establish a colony here, and the Alarans were either going to become willing partners or obstacles to be removed. The corporate playbook was unfolding exactly as he'd seen it happen on other worlds. The supposed generosity of the offer masked its true purpose: to make the Alarans dependent on Vexari technology and protection. Once that dependency was established, the terms would change. Quotas would increase, demands would grow, and resistance would become impossible. Terran's smooth words were the first step in a process that always ended the same way: the powerful taking what they wanted from the vulnerable. Nar's quiet observation shifted from Terran to Ricky, her healer's eyes noting the soldier's understanding. She saw the recognition in his expression, the way his posture changed from neutral to defensive. The maternal need to protect her child expanded to include protecting her people's future. The corporate offer that might have sounded reasonable to others revealed its threatening nature through the reactions of those who understood true danger. Brutus maintained his protective stance, the blue light from his collar casting faint shadows across the grass. The pug's instinctual response echoed the human's learned experience. Sometimes the most dangerous threats came wrapped in polished chrome and smooth promises. The morning air, once filled with birdsong and mist, now carried the subtle tension of a negotiation that was really a confrontation in disguise. Terran finished his presentation with another manufactured smile, his eyes already looking past the villagers toward the valuable land beyond. The generous offer hung in the air, its true nature revealed not through what was said but through what it demanded in return. Independence for dependency, freedom for control, tradition for assimilation. The choice presented as opportunity was really a warning of what was coming. Nar's fingers traced the healing skin around her daughter's wound, her healer's precision detecting something the human's medkit had missed. The bruising spread in geometric patterns that didn't match natural tissue damage. Her touch lingered on a slight ridge beneath the surface, a hardness that felt unlike bone or swollen flesh. The injury's edges showed micro-perfect lines that suggested something other than animal claws had caused this damage. The discovery came when one of the village hunters found a dead ravager near the barrier line. The creature lay on its side, its bioluminescent patches gone dark. Nar approached the carcass with cautious curiosity, her healer's instincts overriding natural revulsion. Beneath the matted fur and glowing skin, her fingers found a surgical scar running along the creature's flank. The cut was too straight, too precise for any natural injury. She called Ricky over without thinking, the cultural barriers between them forgotten in the face of this new evidence. His military training made him the right person to examine what she'd found. Together they pulled back the ravager's hide, revealing the truth beneath. Metal implants glinted in the morning light, embedded along the creature's spine and skull. Wires ran between the devices, connecting them in a network that clearly wasn't part of any natural anatomy. Ricky's mind connected the dots with military efficiency. Controlled predators could be directed weapons, not just wild animals. The coordinated attack on Lyran, the unnatural precision of their movements, the way they'd retreated rather than scattering, it all made terrifying sense now. These weren't random attacks, but field tests of modified biological weapons. The Vexari's sudden interest in this territory took on new meaning. They weren't just after land for expansion. This was about biological control and population manipulation. Modified ravagers could drive the Alorans from their homes without obvious corporate involvement, making the land available for takeover. The attacks would look like natural predation while serving corporate interests. Nar's hands trembled as she examined the implants more closely. The technology was clearly Vexari manufacture, sleek and efficient like everything they produced. The devices appeared to interface with the creature's nervous system, likely enhancing its natural hunting instincts while adding directional control. This explained why the Ravagers had moved with such unnatural coordination during Lyran's attack. Ricky studied the implantation sites, recognizing military-grade surgical techniques. The incisions were clean, the placement strategic for maximum control with minimal interference to natural functions. This wasn't crude experimentation but refined biological warfare development. The Vexari had clearly been working on this project for some time, perfecting their methods. The borderland's delicate balance now faced a threat far beyond corporate land grabs. This was existential warfare disguised as natural predation. The modified Ravagers could be deployed selectively, targeting specific individuals or communities while leaving others untouched. The technology allowed for precise biological control that would be nearly impossible to trace back to its creators. Nar looked from the dead Ravager to her daughter's healing wound, understanding dawning in her eyes. Lyran hadn't been randomly attacked, she'd been specifically targeted, probably because her stargazing made her vulnerable to manipulation. The child's curiosity had made her an unwitting test subject in the Vexari's biological weapons program. Ricky's neutrality shattered as he examined the implants. This went beyond political disputes or corporate expansion. This was active biological warfare development happening in real time. The threat had evolved from theoretical to immediate, from political to personal. The soldier who had tried to leave conflict behind now faced a situation that demanded his specific skills and experience. The dead Ravager lay between them, its modified body evidence of a conspiracy that threatened both their worlds. The morning sunlight glinted off the metal implants, revealing the cold truth beneath the corporate promises of protection and cooperation. What had seemed like a land dispute had become a biological warfare scenario unfolding in real time. Nar approached Ricky's camper alone, her movements hesitant yet deliberate. The traditional woven garments she wore seemed out of place against the metal exterior, but her expression held a resolve that transcended cultural boundaries. She stood at the bottom of the steps, her eyes fixed on the human who had saved her daughter. The tension between her people's deep-seated mistrust of technology and the immediate need to protect her child played across her features. Ricky watched her from the doorway, his posture guarded. He expected the usual Elleran resistance to human involvement, the same suspicion he'd faced since arriving on this borderland. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of difficult choices already made. She came not as an elder representing tradition, but as a mother fearing for her daughter's survival against forces her people couldn't combat alone. "Why help us?" Ricky asked, the question hanging between them like a challenge. He braced for the traditional arguments about human interference and technological corruption. Nar's response came quietly but with undeniable force. Neutrality is just another word for letting bullies win. The simple statement carried the shock of absolute truth. Her words cut through layers of cultural baggage and interspecies suspicion, revealing a pragmatic understanding that Ricky hadn't expected from someone of her background. She represented something new, a middle ground between Alaran tradition and necessary adaptation. Her hands, accustomed to healing with natural remedies and ancient knowledge, now gestured toward the technology that might save them. The contradiction defined her completely. A traditional healer willing to embrace whatever tools could protect her people. Her healer's knowledge combined with this newfound willingness to use technology made her a powerful ally. She understood biological systems in ways Ricky's military training never covered, while he comprehended the technological threats they faced. Together they might actually stand against what was coming. The situation had expanded far beyond Lyran's safety. The discovery of modified ravagers and the planned water contamination revealed a biological catastrophe in the making. This wasn't just about one child's survival anymore. It was about preventing the systematic destruction of an entire civilization. The Vexari plans threatened every Alaran life, not just those who ventured beyond the barriers. Nar's decision to approach Ricky marked a turning point in the conflict. She became the bridge between his skeptical practicality and Thoran traditional authority, between human technology and Alaran wisdom. Her position within the community gave her actions weight that Ricky's never could, while her willingness to adapt made collaboration possible. The maternal drive to protect her child had transcended species and cultural barriers. What began as a mother's fear for her daughter had grown into a strategic understanding of the larger threat. Her love for Lyran became the catalyst for action that might save everyone. Ricky studied her face, seeing the conflict and resolution warring in her emerald eyes. She hadn't come easily to this decision. The tension between her people's values and the practical needs of survival had clearly cost her something. Yet here she stood, putting aside generations of distrust because the alternative was unacceptable. Brutus nudged against Nar's leg, his presence a quiet endorsement of the alliance forming. The pug seemed to understand the significance of this moment, his normal comical expression replaced by unusual seriousness. His blue collar pulsed softly, reflecting the new energy between human and Alaran. Nar reached down to touch the dog's head, her fingers gentle against his wrinkled skin. The simple contact seemed to cement her decision, connecting her to this strange world of human technology through the most basic gesture of companionship. In that moment, the cultural divisions meant nothing against the shared need to survive. She looked from Brutus to Ricky, her expression shifting from maternal concern to strategic determination. The healer had become a general, the mother had become a diplomat, the traditionalist had become an innovator. Her transformation complete, she waited for Ricky's response, her entire being focused on the partnership that might save them all. Nar's hands moved with practiced care as she changed her daughter's bandage, her healer's touch gentle on the healing tissue. The wound appeared to be closing well, the edges knitting together beneath the human's medical dressing. Her fingers paused at the center of the injury, feeling a hardness that shouldn't be there. The skin around the area showed no sign of infection or abnormal swelling, but something solid rested beneath the surface. She called Ricky over, her voice tight with concern. Ricky arrived with his med kit, expecting to assist with routine wound care. Nar guided his fingers to the spot, her own hand trembling slightly. His experienced touch confirmed her suspicion, a small hard object embedded deep in the tissue. The location matched where the Ravager's claws had struck deepest. This wasn't natural healing or even typical wound complication. The shape felt too regular, too manufactured. They moved Lyran to the camper's small table, the lights overhead bright and unforgiving. Ricky carefully numbed the area while Nar held her daughter's hand. The child watched with wide eyes, her trust in both of them complete despite the discomfort. Ricky's surgical tools glinted as he made a precise incision along the healing wound. The procedure took only moments, his hands steady as they worked. The metallic device came free with a slight pull, small enough to rest on his fingertip. It glittered under the lights, its surface too smooth and reflective to be anything natural. Tiny filaments extended from its core like microscopic legs, suggesting it had been designed to integrate with living tissue. The technology looked familiar to Ricky in a way that chilled him. This was military-grade surveillance equipment, nearly identical to what his EDF unit had used for tracking high-value targets. The implications struck them both simultaneously. Lyran hadn't been randomly attacked that night. The Ravagers had been directed to her specifically, guided by this implanted tracker. Her stargazing made her the perfect test subject, a child who regularly ventured beyond the village barriers, whose movements could be monitored and manipulated. The Vixari hadn't just been experimenting on predators. They'd been using a child as live bait for their modified creations. Ricky's professional detachment shattered as he held the tiny device. This wasn't collateral damage or corporate overreach anymore. This was deliberate targeting of a child for military testing. The tracker explained everything. The precise coordination of the Ravagers, their unnatural focus on Lyran, their refusal to break pursuit even when confronted. They'd been following a signal, executing programmed commands rather than hunting by instinct. Nar's face went pale as she understood. Her daughter's curiosity had made her a target. Her wonder at the stars turned against her by corporate manipulation. The personal nature of the attack changed everything. This wasn't about territory or resources anymore. It was about one child being used as an experiment, her body violated without consent for military purposes. Ricky's hands closed around the tiny tracker, his knuckles white. The soldier who had sought isolation now felt something he hadn't experienced in years, pure targeted vengeance. His protective instincts shifted from general responsibility to very specific purpose. The Vixari had crossed a line that changed the rules of engagement completely. They'd made this personal when they implanted a tracking device in a child's arm. Lyran watched them from the table, her innocent eyes missing none of the tension in the room. She touched her bandaged arm, then looked at the tiny device in Ricky's hand. Her understanding might be incomplete, but she knew something fundamental had changed. The adults who had been cautiously cooperative were now united by something darker, something that went beyond cultural differences or temporary alliances. The tracker sat between them on the table, a cold piece of metal that explained too much. The Vixari's plans weren't just about land acquisition or resource control anymore. They involved modifying living creatures and implanting technology in children, treating beings as experimental subjects rather than people. The border conflict had become something far more sinister, and Ricky's role in it had transformed from reluctant participant to committed adversary. Kayla appeared from the shadows like a ghost materializing from the night itself. Her Vixari uniform looked out of place against the natural landscape, the chrome accents catching moonlight in sharp glints. She moved with the hesitant determination of someone crossing a line they could never uncross. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached Ricky's camper, her eyes scanning the darkness for any sign of pursuit. Ricky met her at the bottom of the steps, his rifle held ready but not aimed. The Vixari woman's fear was palpable in the way she held herself, the quickness of her breathing, the way her eyes kept darting toward the eastern horizon where her people's city glowed. Yet beneath the fear ran a stronger current of resolve, a moral certainty that overcame her obvious terror. She spoke quickly, her words tumbling out in a rush of confession. The Ravager modifications were just the beginning, she explained. A testing phase for something far more sinister. Administrator Terran planned to release a bioengineered pathogen during Terrell's ceremonial cleansing ritual. The water contamination would appear to be a natural disaster, forcing the Alarans from their lands without obvious corporate involvement. Her conscience wouldn't allow her to participate in what amounted to genocide for profit. The words hung between them, stark and undeniable. She'd worked in the research division, seen the plans, understood the implications. The pathogen was designed to cause severe illness rather than death, making the land available for takeover while maintaining plausible deniability. Her defection meant more than losing her career. She was risking her life by coming here, betraying her own people to warn their intended victims. The Vixari expansion initiative had factions that believed in coexistence, but they were being overruled by those who preferred extermination, disguised as progress. Her actions tonight ensured she could never return to New Proxima, never see her home or family again. The water contamination plot made the Ravager attacks seem like minor distractions by comparison. Where the modified predators targeted individuals, The pathogen would affect the entire community simultaneously. The ceremonial cleansing ritual was chosen specifically because it guaranteed maximum exposure. Every Alaran would drink from the sacred spring. During the ceremony, the conspiracy had reached apocalyptic proportions. This wasn't just about land grabs anymore. It was about civilization eradication through biological means, about removing an entire culture under the guise of environmental disaster. The scale of the planned attack shifted the conflict from border dispute to existential threat. Kayla provided specific details: the pathogen's delivery mechanism, the timing of the ritual, the way corporate forces would move in once the Alarans were too sick to resist. Her information was precise, technical, and terrifying in its completeness. She'd clearly been planning this defection for some time, gathering evidence and waiting for the right moment. Ricky studied her face in the moonlight, seeing the conflict warring there. She wasn't some idealistic rebel. She was a scientist who'd found herself participating in something monstrous. Her moral courage in coming here changed everything. They'd been preparing for animal attacks and land disputes, not biological warfare on this scale. The woman's hands finally stilled as she finished speaking, her confession complete. She'd given them everything: the plans, the timing, the methods. The weight of her decision showed in the slump of her shoulders, the way she seemed to age before his eyes. She'd burned all her bridges for this moment, trusting that these strangers would be better than her own people. The night felt colder after she finished speaking, the stars overhead seeming more distant somehow. The conspiracy they'd uncovered had layers neither of them had imagined, reaching from modified predators to planned pandemics. Kayla's warning transformed their understanding of the threat completely. One woman's moral courage had changed the equation of the coming conflict. Where they'd been preparing for a battle, they now faced a potential extinction event. The defectors' information gave them a chance, a slim one but real, to stop the unthinkable from happening. The evacuation began under a moonless sky, the three groups moving like shadows through the darkened landscape. Ricky, Nar, and Thorn had divided the Alaran community based on capability and vulnerability, each leader taking a different route toward safety. Their planning had been rushed, their maps drawn in dirt with sticks, but the coordination was precise out of necessity. Any mistake would mean discovery, and discovery would mean the Vexari's superior technology would overwhelm them all. Thorin led the largest group east toward the ravines, his knowledge of the terrain their greatest asset. The elder moved with surprising grace for his age, guiding his people through passages invisible to orbital sensors. They moved in single file, their traditional clothing blending with the rock formations, their steps silent on the stone. Thorin used the natural acoustics of the canyons to listen for pursuit, his ears more reliable than any technology could be in this interference-heavy region. The eastern route offered concealment but little protection if discovered. Nar's group consisted of the children, elderly and injured, their movement necessarily slower and more cautious. She guided them toward Ricky's camper, the only defensible position in the neutral zone. Lyran walked close to her mother, Brutus matching her pace with unusual seriousness. The pug's collar emitted a soft blue glow that served as both protection and tracking signal, allowing Ricky to monitor their progress from his position. The technology felt foreign to Nar, but she understood its necessity in keeping her daughter safe. Ricky took the western route alone, moving parallel to Nar's group but maintaining distance. His military training made him the obvious choice for the most dangerous path, directly through areas most likely to be monitored. He carried the extracted tracking device, planning to plant it on a wild ravager to create a false signal for the Vexari to follow. His movement was all economy and precision, every step calculated to avoid detection while drawing attention away from the real evacuation. The tension came from the coordination required between groups moving through completely different terrains. Thorin's people navigated narrow rock passages while Nar's group crossed open grasslands, both needing to reach their objectives at precisely the same time. Ricky's diversion had to be timed to coincide with their movement, creating a window of confusion for the evacuation to succeed. They communicated through prearranged signals, light flashes from mirrored surfaces, animal calls that blended with the night sounds. Brutus proved more valuable than any technology Ricky could have provided. The pug stayed close to Lyran, his collar's defensive field active at its lowest setting. The blue glow created a protective bubble around the child, its energy field causing nearby surveillance drones to experience slight interference patterns. The Vexari monitoring systems would dismiss these anomalies as environmental factors, rather than signs of movement. The animal's instinctual protection complemented the technological safeguards perfectly. The western route tested Ricky's skills to their limits. He moved through areas thick with Vexari sensor nodes, each step requiring careful planning. His military training allowed him to identify blind spots in the coverage, moments when the orbiting satellites switched between sectors. He placed the tracking device on a ravager that was stalking a smaller creature, the predator's natural aggression making it perfect for his purposes. The creature took off running, carrying the false signal directly into the most heavily monitored sector. Thorin's group reached the eastern caves as Ricky's diversion took effect. The Vexari surveillance shifted toward the false signal, giving Nar's vulnerable group the window they needed. The children moved quietly, their small forms hidden in the tall grass as they approached the camper. Brutus's collar pulsed rhythmically, guiding Ricky's watchful eyes toward their progress. This wasn't military precision, but desperate improvisation using combined knowledge. Ricky's tactical experience merged with Thorin's terrain knowledge and Nar's understanding of her people's capabilities. The evacuation plan represented unprecedented cooperation between species that had viewed each other with suspicion just days before. Where diplomacy had failed for generations, immediate necessity created functional alliance. The three groups reached their objectives within minutes of each other, the timing working despite the overwhelming odds against them. Thorin's people secured the caves. Nar's group sheltered in the camper, and Ricky watched from a ridge as the Vexari forces pursued his false signal toward the western Badlands. The success of the evacuation hung on continued coordination and the maintenance of their fragile trust. Terran arrived at the cleansing ceremony with the polished confidence of a CEO entering a boardroom. His Vexari suit caught the morning light, the fabric too perfect against the natural surroundings. He moved among the Alorans with practiced ease, his smile designed to reassure while his eyes calculated the perfect moment to deploy the biological agent. The ceremonial gathering provided ideal cover, everyone focused on tradition, no one watching for corporate sabotage. Ricky stepped from the crowd as Terran approached the sacred spring. The soldier's movement broke the ceremonial stillness, his presence creating an immediate tension. He spoke directly, his voice carrying across the assembled Alorans. The water contamination ends now. The accusation hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. He detailed the plan, the pathogen, the delivery mechanism, the intended sickness that would clear the land for corporate takeover. Terran's corporate persona cracked like thin ice. The polished smile vanished, replaced by cold determination. His eyes narrowed, the friendly administrator replaced by someone capable of planning genocide for profit. He didn't deny the allegations, simply shifted to threats about the consequences of interference. The mask had dropped completely, revealing the ruthless ambition beneath. Ricky's hands tightened but didn't reach for weapons. He stood his ground, meeting Terran's glare without flinching. "I won't kill you," he said, the words simple and final. "That's the difference between us." The restraint created an unexpected space, a moment where violence wasn't the only answer. His choice of mercy over execution changed the energy completely. Thorin used the distraction perfectly. The elder began a traditional chant, his voice rising in a rhythm that drew Aloran attention away from the confrontation. The ceremonial participants joined in, their voices creating a wall of sound that masked other movements. The distraction wasn't aggressive but absorptive, using tradition to create cover for action. Lyran and Nar moved to the spring's edge while Kayla guided them from the camper via comlink. The Vexari scientist's voice remained calm as she talked them through disabling the contamination device. Lyran's small hands worked with surprising precision, following Kayla's instructions while Nar maintained watch. The technology felt foreign in this sacred space but necessary against the threat. They found the device hidden among the ceremonial stones, its sleek Vexari design looking utterly out of place. Lyran extracted it carefully, her fingers steady despite the tension. Nar administered the neutralizing agent Kayla had provided, a clear liquid that shimmered as it entered the water. The process felt like blasphemy and salvation combined, technology invading tradition to preserve it. The spring's waters began to glow with soft blue light, as the neutralizing agent spread. Instead of the intended pathogen, the ceremonial waters now shimmered with protective energy. The transformation was visible and beautiful, the blue light reflecting on the faces of the gathered Alorans. What should have been a tool of destruction became a symbol of preservation. Terran watched in stunned silence as his plan unraveled. The corporate arrogance faded into confusion as the waters glowed with the wrong kind of light. His calculated risk had failed because he underestimated the coordination between species he considered inferior. The technological advantage meant nothing against united resistance. The confrontation ended without violence, but with complete victory. The corporate manipulation was defeated through careful planning and cross-species cooperation. The sacred spring remained pure, its waters glowing with the evidence of successful protection. Tradition and technology had combined to create something new, a defense that honored both innovation and heritage. The Alorans gathered at the water's edge, their ceremonial purpose now expanded to include celebration. The glowing waters became part of the ritual, a new chapter in their traditions. Ricky stood apart from the celebration, his work done but his presence now accepted. The soldier who had refused involvement had become the catalyst for preservation.